Hello. Thanks so much, Mike. Hello and welcome to today's request for concept paper discussion. Thank you for joining us today to learn more about the AmeriCorps VISTA program and the process for requesting VISTA resources. Today, you'll hear from 4 staff members from the Corporation for National Community Service, or CNCS, the federal agency that administers the AmeriCorps VISTA program. My name is Rob Cox, and I'm the director of the Program Impact and Operations team for AmeriCorps VISTA, based in Washington, D.C. I'm a proud VISTA alum. I served in the District of Columbia from 2002 to 2004 and have stayed involved in national service for over 15 years in a number of different roles, including working with our Senior Corps program. I'm joined by an all-star team today. Starting clockwise, Stephanie Reitzman is the Senior Advisor on Policy and Programming Matters for VISTA. Stephanie is currently stationed in Boise, Idaho, and began her national service as a VISTA member in Helena, Montana, and has remained committed to national service, acting in a number of roles, including nearly 12 years of CNCS field experience in Nevada, Oregon, Washington, and Alaska, and nearly 3 years with our VISTA headquarters team. Stephanie's love for national service extends to her family, as she met her husband, a fellow VISTA alum, while serving in Montana, and their daughter was born during VISTA's 50th anniversary celebration just 5 years ago. Also with us today is Eric Powell. Eric is a VISTA training specialist focused on orienting and training VISTA supervisors and project staff. Eric himself served in VISTA in 2006 and as a VISTA leader in 2008. You'll see Eric in the chat and the Q&A today, and if you become a VISTA sponsor, you may see Eric online in your VISTA supervisors training. Kelly Daly is the lead program specialist for the Program Impact and Operations team. Kelly joined the agency in 1991 and after her Peace Corps service in Tunisia, first managing VISTA and Senior Corps projects in our Richmond, Virginia office, and then transferring to CNCS headquarters in Washington, D.C., and ultimately working with VISTA. I'm also joined by some partners from LSI who are helping us with today's webinar, Mike and Steve, who are producing today's webinar and are helping us out with some polls that we'll be doing today. So what exactly are we discussing today? Well, we're going to focus on giving you the basic information you need to decide if AmeriCorps VISTA resources are a good fit to help your organization and your community. To do that, we'll cover the big picture by taking a broad look at CNCS and all of our national service programs, and we'll dig deeper into the VISTA program. We'll take a look at some roles and responsibilities, both of an AmeriCorps VISTA member and of a VISTA sponsoring organization. We'll cover how to apply for VISTA resources. We'll look at the application process, focusing on the first steps. And lastly, we'll point you to additional resources so that you can learn when, where, and how to access the support we have to help you develop a VISTA project. Our fiscal year starts October 1st, so even though today is in the month of September, to us it feels like we're approaching a brand new year and brand new opportunities to work with organizations like yours. So we're excited to share this with you today and to help you decide if taking the next step to join our national service community is right for you. As I mentioned, we all work for the Corporation for National and Community Service, or CNCS. CNCS is the federal agency for service and volunteering. Through CNCS programs, we engage millions of Americans in results-driven service to solve problems, expand opportunity, and strengthen communities. We do this by providing resources to thousands of other organizations each year. Many of our partners are national organizations you've probably heard of, like the American Red Cross, the United Way, Habitat for Humanity, and the Boys and Girls Club. But we also partner with lesser-known faith-based and community organizations, as well as public agencies. And all told, CNCS resources can be found in more than 50,000 locations across the country. CNCS is focused on meeting pressing national and local needs, from combating the opioid crisis and helping students to make progress in school, to responding to disasters and supporting veterans and military families. We primarily address these needs through our two broad programs called AmeriCorps and Senior Corps. Today, we're going to talk about AmeriCorps, but it's worth noting that both AmeriCorps and Senior Corps share a common element, and that is that they are fundamentally public-private partnerships. In a recent year, CNCS not only provided resources to a network of community partners, but those partners leveraged $1.25 billion in outside resources, more than our agency's entire federal appropriation, to increase community impact and expand resources for all citizens. So that is CNCS. Let's talk a little bit more about AmeriCorps. What is AmeriCorps? As I mentioned, AmeriCorps is a network of national service programs that all focus on improving lives, strengthening communities, and fostering civic engagement. AmeriCorps engages 75,000 members annually in intensive national service to meet needs such as training and tutoring students, providing science, technology, engineering, and math, and financial literacy education, and mobilizing millions of volunteers to multiply impact. AmeriCorps members serve with thousands of organizations, nonprofits, schools, faith-based organizations, public agencies, and all AmeriCorps members provide intensive, sustained service, often a year, addressing a local community need. They're a force multiplier, recruiting and supervising millions of additional volunteers to boost the impact of the organizations that they serve. And for many, AmeriCorps is a pathway to education and employment. Similar to an apprenticeship, AmeriCorps members earn while they learn and gain valuable career skills and experience to prepare them for work, or in the case of folks changing careers, to help them transition to a new line of work. There are three main programs in the AmeriCorps family. AmeriCorps State and National supports a wide range of local service programs that engage thousands of Americans in intensive community service. In AmeriCorps State and National, the members are age 17 and older. They serve full-time or part-time. They have a wide range of service activities and are able to provide direct service like tutoring children and helping to deliver food. AmeriCorps State and National is a grant-based program where the support from AmeriCorps activities is provided to organizations in the form of federal grants, generally through a competitive grant competition. The National Civilian Community Corps, also known as NCCC, strengthens communities and develops leaders through direct team-based national and community service. In this program, individuals must be between the ages of 18 and 24, and they serve full-time, generally for 10 months. Members in AmeriCorps NCCC work in a team-based environment, and they participate in a residential program, working and living with their team. And NCCC members conduct direct service in the community, sometimes repairing trails in national parks or helping to clean up after disasters. Lastly, the AmeriCorps VISTA program, which stands for Volunteers in Service Volunteers in Service to America, is the main topic for today's webinar, and it also falls under the AmeriCorps umbrella. So without further ado, let's focus in on VISTA. VISTA is the national service program that strengthens efforts to eliminate and alleviate poverty through volunteering and the mobilization of resources. VISTA has 4 core principles that guide our work and the work that sponsors and members accomplish in their communities. The first principle is fighting poverty. A VISTA project's goal is to support efforts that address poverty and poverty-related problems that individuals and communities are experiencing. Also, VISTA strives to empower communities. We want to engage the residents and the people who will benefit from the project in the planning, development, and ongoing implementation of that project. VISTA focuses on capacity building. By that, we mean that the goal of VISTA projects and members is to strengthen and increase the reach of anti-poverty initiatives in coordination with sponsor staff, community members, and community volunteers. Lastly, we try to create sustainable solutions. We want the capacity developed through the VISTA project and the VISTA members to continue even after the VISTA resources are gone. So during their service, VISTA members develop systems, relationships, and knowledge which they transfer to the organization and the community to sustain over the long term. But before we go any further, I want to note a few definitions and terms that will help you understand our structure. We've already introduced a few terms to you. The first term is VISTA project. A project or a VISTA project means a set of activities that are operated and overseen by a sponsor. What's a sponsor? A sponsor or a project sponsor or a VISTA sponsor are all the same term, all mean the same thing. They mean a public agency or a private nonprofit organization that receives assistance through CNCS and is responsible for operating and overseeing a VISTA project. A public agency might be a state, local, or tribal government. Project director is another key term for us, or sometimes a VISTA project director. Project director means a staff person of the sponsor who's been assigned by the sponsor the overall responsibility for the management of the VISTA project. And project directors are responsible for executing all aspects of the project as outlined by the sponsor. Supervisor. A supervisor is an individual who directly supervises a VISTA member. This can be at the project level or at the partner site level. All members are trained, all member supervisors are trained. CNCS provides a virtual supervisor training for any new supervisors. Lastly, CNCS regional office. Our agency, CNCS, has field staff working throughout the United States. There are 8 CNCS regional offices representing all 50 states, the District of Columbia, and U.S. territories. And regional offices help develop, support, and facilitate VISTA projects through their entire life cycle. And they are a critical resource to organizations who want to apply to become a VISTA member, a VISTA sponsor. Okay, now's a good time for me to take a breath and have us hear more from you. We're assuming that you're joining today's webinar as a representative of an organization that's interested in applying for VISTA resources. And we'd like to know, what type of organization are you representing today? So you can see a poll that has come up here, hopefully on your computers. Please select which organization type from the list that most closely resembles yours. So we've got local nonprofit, statewide nonprofit, multi-state nonprofit, city or municipal government, state government, tribal government, or tribal organization. So we're going to give you a little bit of time, log in your response there, and we'll take a look and see what organizations are the most represented on today's call. Okay,
and
great.
Rob, this
so
is Stephanie. We have a question coming in. Are public universities included in local nonprofits? How would you like for them to vote in this poll?
Oh, that's a good question. I think that might be one that we just left out, probably inadvertently. Certainly institutions of higher education are eligible to be VISTA sponsors. So thank you for weighing in on the chat, and we'll make a note of that. But it looks like from the responses that we did provide, we've got most folks, 12 folks, 60% of our call representing a local nonprofit. We've got another good sized group, just a bit over a third of folks calling in representing a statewide nonprofit, and then some folks also coming from a multi-state nonprofit, or at least one person. Okay, great, thank you so much for weighing in. That's helpful for us to see who we're reaching today. But regardless of your organization type, there may be ways that VISTA can support your mission and make an impact in your communities. We have, as I mentioned, worked with thousands of other organizations, not only in any year, but over the last 50 years. So. Okay, so let's jump back into our VISTA overview and take a look at the VISTA program's annual accomplishments. This is just a typical year's worth of accomplishments. As you can see on the slide, the AmeriCorps VISTA program has been supporting individuals and communities since 1965. Started as one of the War on Poverty programs. And in a recent year, the program engaged over 8,500 participants in the VISTA program. And they served at over 4,500 different sites. Again, in 1 year, those members helped mobilize 800,000 community volunteers, really a force multiplier. And those VISTA members serve closely with those community volunteers at some sites, and they're instrumental in developing processes to build volunteer recruitment, management capacity, and systems that can have the volunteers continue to serve in different ways. Also, through the VISTA members, sponsoring organizations and communities received more than $206 million in cash and in-kind resources to support the VISTA projects and corresponding events. Those are some figures we're really, really proud of in VISTA, and again, just I think reflects the kind of capacity building work that VISTA members do and their actions as a force multiplier. So let's go from the annual accomplishments of the whole VISTA program and zoom in on the accomplishments for just one project sponsor to give you a little bit of a picture of what this looks like for an individual organization. And today we're looking at the Homeless and Housing Coalition of Kentucky as an example of a great project. This project serves both urban and rural areas, and they have seen some impressive results from the capacity building activities of VISTA members. In the rural areas, it's challenging for individuals to access housing services and to obtain third-party verification of status as a person experiencing homelessness, which is required to confirm eligibility for some homeless service programs. That's not surprising, as in some instances, organizations providing housing services can find themselves understaffed and under-resourced. So in this VISTA project, 23 VISTA members provided capacity building services to 12 nonprofit human service agencies. Those VISTA members wrote funding proposals, they recruited community volunteers, engaged in outreach efforts through social media campaigns and print materials. And as a result of their efforts, those members leveraged more than 2,000 volunteers who served more than 40,000 hours in the community. And as part of that project's resource development efforts and the VISTA service, they raised over $738,000 in cash resources and over $880,000 worth of in-kind resources. And ultimately, more than 1,000 individuals received housing placement services, and 320 individuals transitioned to housing. And they're continuing to build processes and systems to sustain their activities at that project. Now, after that spotlight, I'll turn it over to Stephanie to talk a little bit more about sponsoring organizations.
Rob, before you do, this is Kelly. We took a look at who had signed up for the webinar and saw there were some smaller organizations. So we also wanted to highlight a small project that only had 5 VISTAs, but we stuck with Kentucky. The Audubon Area Community Services used 5 VISTAs in several rural counties to build their capacity, focusing on opioid addiction and recovery programming. Those 5 VISTAs were able to recruit 127 community volunteers, as well as manage 144 volunteers who delivered presentations that the VISTAs had developed on opiate use and delivering life skills classes. They also raised over $110,000 in cash and in-kind resources for their program. And as you can see from the last note, they were able to develop a community recovery celebration event, which turned out over 600 community members to celebrate the work that the beneficiary community as well as the VISTAs had accomplishments. So regardless of the project size and your organization size, large or small, VISTA can help make an impact in your community. So now I will turn it over to Stephanie.
Awesome. Thanks, Kelly. And thanks, Rob. It's always great to hear such great program highlights. So hopefully folks now have a basic understanding of what the VISTA program is all about. So I'm going to shift the conversation here just a bit and talk about sponsor organizations so that you can really start thinking about whether our program really aligns with your organization's work. So during this part, I'm going to talk about some of the responsibilities that are required of our VISTA sponsors. So if you are selected as a VISTA sponsor, you'll have the opportunity to join sponsors from across the country in our mission of fighting poverty locally in your community. The VISTA project director or supervisor at your organization will assign responsibilities as appropriate within the project, and you'll really be responsible for ensuring that your project is in compliance with VISTA policies and procedures. And we'll talk a little bit about what that means. So depending on how your project is structured, you may actually serve as the point of contact for members and possibly even site supervisors. So you'll see here we have a couple of project models. The first and most basic program model that we have is what we refer to as a single site sponsor. So this really refers to just one agency hosting a VISTA project at one site. In this model, we have the VISTA supervisor and the member or members in the same location. And you'll see just to the right of that a visual of an intermediary organization. So an intermediary is a VISTA sponsoring organization that really helps us provide resources to other eligible organizations. These other organizations are often small and may not really have the capacity to access VISTA resources or other federal resources on their own. So the intermediary is an organization that has that capacity to develop and to support those VISTA sites, sometimes across a wide geographic area, or sometimes just among a group of organizations that address a common community need. Usually our intermediary organizations provide administrative services as well as some technical support, training, and oversight to those sub-sites where the VISTA members are serving. An intermediary organization can partner with another organization to place VISTA members, or the intermediary organization may place VISTAs at some of their own chapter or affiliate sites. So effective project management really is an essential part of a successful VISTA project and of a quality member experience. So today I'm just going to touch upon 3 main project management tasks that our VISTA sponsors are responsible for. So first, you're going to want to develop your proposed project with community members. I know Rob touched on this a bit in the beginning. It's important to know that your community members really understand the needs of the community as well as the wishes, right? They bring that key perspective in the planning, the implementation, as well as the evaluation of your project and all the associated activities. So it's that community's guidance, support, and buy-in that really is instrumental to your project's success. Next, of course, performance measures are really important to our work, and they really help us keep a project on track, and they'll help you keep a project on track as well. I know some folks can often be a little bit scared or nervous of performance measures, so of course, don't worry. I know Rob mentioned, of course, our regional offices. So we have CNCS staff across the country that really are available to help you determine which performance measures may be the best for your project. Your CNCS regional office can really help you refine your project ideas and really help ensure that the community's needs as well as VISTA's needs are being met in the development of the project. So the performance measures that you select will actually inform the reporting that you complete on your project. So that's what you will be responsible for completing on. The information that you provide in these reports really demonstrates your project's impact as well as resource management. And it also helps our staff determine how to provide you with better technical assistance to support the project. So there's a couple of reports that you'll complete to inform us of your project's accomplishments and challenges. So you'll see listed here, we have the Project Progress Report, or the PPR. These are completed twice a year, and the PPR information, it becomes part of your project's official record and can be used to evaluate your project's progress, of course. We've developed PPR guidance that will assist you with writing and completing the report. And of course, we discussed our intermediary projects, and we have some multi-site projects. So if you are a project that would be operating with multiple sites, one thing you'll want to really think about and develop is a way to collect and aggregate that information for those performance measures from members serving at those various sites. Lastly, on this slide, you'll see here that we have another report called the VISTA Progress Report Supplement, or the VPRS. So this is an annual report that tracks some of the demographic information for your project. This is typically due later in the calendar year, and it's based on our agency's fiscal year. So again, as Rob mentioned, that is October 1 through September 30th. This is typically due in like mid-November for folks. One thing to note that in order to adhere to this time frame, you'll want to be able to track information with your members on a monthly basis so that you can submit accurate data in this report. We have plenty of information and resources, though, out there to help you with this report, as well as the regular PPRs. We have informational webinars and instructions, and all of this information is included in the VISTA Sponsor Resource Guide, which, of course, is made available to all of our sponsors. So there's many responsibilities that a sponsor undertakes to help make the VISTA experience positive and meaningful for all of its members. Some of the most important responsibilities involve managing the VISTA members themselves. So as a sponsor, you would be responsible for drafting those catchy opportunity listings to announce your position and really to attract those top quality candidates. In addition, you'd also recruit, screen, interview, and recommend the best candidates for service. You would get to select who you wanted to be serving on your project and make that recommendation to us. The recruitment and placement of VISTA members takes place on our web-based system. And we've also developed some social media graphics, messages, and other promotional items to help you with all of these recruitment and awareness efforts. Our sponsors are also responsible for providing an in-depth on-site orientation to all incoming VISTA members, as well as ongoing training and professional development opportunities. And our sponsors are also responsible for providing just that day-to-day supervision and oversight, as well as support for their members. This includes, of course, introducing and orienting the VISTA member into the community, confirming that members have, of course, the space, the supplies, and the equipment that they need in order to be effective in their service, providing reasonable accommodations to members who request them based on different abilities, and ensuring that a member's activities are in line with their approved VISTA assignment description. So it's important to understand the difference between the VISTA program and other CNCS programs. I know that Rob talked a little bit about some of those different AmeriCorps programs in the beginning. So as we talked, VISTA members typically focus on capacity building, right? And so by that we mean that a VISTA member service really is meant to expand the scale, reach, efficiency, or effectiveness of programs or of organizations. So to do this, the project activities should focus primarily on capacity building as opposed to that direct service. So let's think about what this looks like on the ground for an after-school tutoring program. So an example of indirect service and capacity building that a VISTA member may do includes creating volunteer applications and assignment descriptions for those tutors, maybe designing a system to effectively recruit and place volunteer tutors, or designing a volunteer training or materials and a handbook, again, to support those volunteer tutors. The idea is that the systems and the resource materials that the VISTA members created is going to remain in place at the organization long after that member has completed their service. An example, though, of direct service would be more like an AmeriCorps state member or an NCCC member tutoring those children one-on-one. So while our VISTA members may do some limited direct service, particularly in the beginning of the service year, their service activities really shouldn't focus on this type of direct service. If this is the type of service that your organization really needs right now, and creating a community volunteer program to carry that out isn't feasible, then AmeriCorps State or NCCC may be a better option for you. Okay, so I'm going to touch on one other thing here before passing it over. As a sponsor, you'll learn a lot more about cost sharing and the benefits of cost sharing to your program. So cost sharing is a strategy in which a VISTA sponsoring organization pays the living allowance for one or more of its AmeriCorps VISTA members. This is something that's strongly encouraged and is an effective way for the VISTA program to reach more local communities across the country. So in this cost share partnership, the sponsoring organization is invoiced by us for the associated member living allowance costs. You can see several benefits listed here on the slide, which include increasing the number of VISTAs that your agency receives, of course, expanding the VISTA resources across the country, and really showing your organization's commitment to the project. So now that I've provided a short overview of the VISTA program models, as well as sponsoring organizations' responsibilities, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Kelly.
Great, thanks, Stephanie. We've gone into a lot of detail about the agency, our programs, and the VISTA project. But with that background, I want to focus on the most important resource, which is our VISTA members. I'm going to go over the eligibility, the type of work they can do, and the corresponding benefits, so you have a better idea of who would be coming to serve on your project. VISTA service is a 12-month full-time commitment, with VISTA members engaging in indirect service to build capacity and help sustain your project in poverty alleviation. There are a few things that you should know. VISTAs are members. They are not employees, interns, or volunteers of your organization or of CNCS. VISTAs serve at their sponsoring agency. They do not work there. And VISTAs receive a modest living allowance that aligns with the community that they are serving, which means that depending on the area where they serve, New York versus a rural community, their living allowances will differ. So who's really cut out to be a VISTA member? While the typical image of an AmeriCorps VISTA member is a highly skilled recent college graduate, a significant percentage of our members are baby boomers who bring a wide array of professional life experience to their VISTA assignments. We're even getting VISTAs who served in the 60s and 70s coming back to us after retirement. The different life perspectives and experiences provide a unique lens from which each member views the world and tackles issues at the community level. particularly if they are coming from within your own low-income community. VISTA members pursue their assignments for a variety of reasons, ranging from wanting to make a difference in eliminating poverty to learning new career skills and networking. Some other facts you'll see about VISTA members on the slide: must be 18 years of age, pass a background check, and we have local or national recruits. As well as some other facts on the slide. VISTA leaders are assigned to projects that request them when we have the resources with 8 or more VISTAs. These are individuals that have already served as a VISTA member, an AmeriCorps member, or Peace Corps volunteer. The leaders can help recruit, mentor, train your VISTAs. They can help coordinate report writing and generally support the teams of their VISTA members, whether they're all at your site or spread out across your state, or if you have a national project across the country. They can help guide data collection and help you interpret the data, but not complete the reporting activities that Stephanie talked about earlier. And while they cannot supervise your VISTAs, they can help coordinate and facilitate the efforts of your VISTAs, such as leading trainings, having check-in sessions, but again, they would not supervise the members. That is the job of the VISTA project director or supervisor. Now that you know who the VISTAs and VISTA leaders are, let's take a look at what they actually do. The impact in the communities they serve is invaluable, as you could tell by the impact of the dollars raised and volunteers recruited. VISTAs provide capacity building to organizations and projects and work to empower communities and lift them out of poverty. It's done in many different ways based on your organization, the assignments you create, the community's needs, and the VISTA's own creativity. Members are key in building and maintaining partnerships and collaborating with organizations and your stakeholders. They can create programs, including volunteer management systems and trainings, and also participate in various aspects of development and fundraising, always a popular task. VISTAs do all of this while living at the same level as the communities that they serve. As you can see, VISTA members and leaders participate in a wide range of different activities within an organization and in their community. While there are countless unique projects and activities that are perfect for VISTA members, there are definitely some, though, that are prohibited. These are some of the things that VISTAs cannot do. Prior to their service, VISTA members must complete an online terms and conditions course that details the information we're providing to you about what's allowed and not during allowed. If a member violates one of these terms or conditions, the supervisor is required to contact the CNCS regional office immediately. The violations have different repercussions, and for the protection of your project and any other members on board, it's critical to act promptly. The VISTA program is focused solely on serving American communities, and members cannot work on any international projects. They may not engage in religious instruction, conducting worship services, or engaging in any form of proselytizing during their service time. Again, this applies to their VISTA service. There are also some prohibited political activities. Many of you have heard of the Hatch Act, and some of these will sound the same. A VISTA cannot engage in partisan political activities while in service, such as fundraising for a partisan political campaign at any time, or identifying themselves as a VISTA while engaging in partisan political activities. Along in those same lines, VISTAs cannot be involved in voter registration as part of their VISTA service. They cannot drive your organization's volunteers or clients to the polls. In general, VISTAs cannot engage in or support political activity, religious activity, lobbying, or union organizing as part of their service or while perceived to be serving as a VISTA. It doesn't happen a lot, but we do want to point it out. Let's move on to the topic of supplanting staff. Members shall not perform duties that should be done and or typically done by paid staff, existing volunteers, or contractors. That is actually in our guiding legislation. The role of VISTA is building capacity to bring communities out of poverty, and members do not typically perform the direct service activities that staff would do, except as needed in limited circumstances, such as for training purposes. So for instance, if you've lost funding for a program officer or a web coordinator or social media advisor, VISTAs cannot be used to supplant staff positions. Now that we have covered the do's and don'ts of VISTA service, let's review some of the member benefits. If you want to become a VISTA sponsor, you'll want to know all the benefits available to VISTA members so you can support them and inform candidates during the recruitment process. We provide a lot of this information, but you may attract candidates that come to you outside of My AmeriCorps initially, so it's important to know these. In addition to the benefits, which range from the living allowance, non-competitive hiring eligibility for federal jobs, and an end of service award, which can be either the education award or a cash stipend. We have many others that aren't listed, including student loan forbearance. You'll see up on the slide child care as well. We also have health care benefits. And not to mention the fact that AmeriCorps VISTA service, the non-competitive eligibility, not only gets you in federal service, but for federal retirement, in some cases, state government retirement, that time counts.
Okay, so for those of you wondering where we are in the presentation, we're at slide 25 of 40. And then we're going to make sure that we get to some of your questions. I do see that we've got some questions coming in through the chat. Please keep those coming through. Next up, we're going to talk about the application process for VISTAs. I see that Decky has got a question in there about whether you can apply for one VISTA, maybe give this a test run through the year. Absolutely, our VISTAs serve with sponsors in, I should say sponsors might host one VISTA a year or two VISTAs a year. And a regional office who we talked about before can really help figure out what's the appropriate number of VISTAs and what can a typical VISTA carry out in a one year period to help design a project that fits that resource level. Most of our projects last 3 to 5 years, so you actually have a VISTA serve for 1 year, then you recruit another VISTA to serve another year, and so forth. So we have a variety of sizes of VISTA projects. I think these days our regional offices can, like I said, guide folks through what that should look like. And Stephanie talked a little earlier about intermediary sponsors. Sometimes those regional offices, if your organization isn't yet ready to be a VISTA sponsor directly, you might be able to partner with an existing intermediary sponsor that's already supporting VISTAs and carrying on good work that our regional offices are aware of. So we're going to talk a little bit about the application process and some of the resources that we have to support you if you're considering applying. And certainly the regional offices are a big critical resource for that. So first, let's talk a little bit about the application process. You heard about CNCS as an agency and the VISTA program, member roles, sponsor responsibilities. So let's talk about what do you have to do to become a sponsor. And we'll also talk a little bit about some of our programming priorities for our upcoming fiscal year. So there are two broad steps to the VISTA program application process. First, the the organization that's interested in getting VISTA resources submits a concept paper. And CNCS reviews the concept paper to get a better understanding of the proposed project and to determine if the activities and the organization are in alignment with VISTA's programming priorities and those key principles and all the things that we just talked about. The concept paper submission deadline for the first quarter of this upcoming fiscal year, FY21, is October 1st. And I saw a question in the chat about the timeline for things, and we'll review the timeline a little bit later in the presentation. If CNCS accepts the concept paper, the organization is then invited to submit a full application. So our CNCS regional office staff are available to provide technical assistance and guidance during the writing of both the concept paper and the application. And again, I strongly encourage you to take advantage of that technical assistance. It is not, VISTA is, I think, unusual as a federal agency that provides those kinds of resources to provide that kind of technical assistance before and during the whole application process. So we wanted to also give you some characteristics of a strong concept paper. And really, to create the concept paper, applicants use certain concept paper instructions, which can be found on our nationalservice.gov website. Those instructions contain details on how to submit the concept paper, what to include, and the picture here shows the cover of those instructions. We try not to keep secrets here. So again, we wanted to highlight several characteristics that we associate with strong concept papers. First, strong concept papers align with CNCS focus areas and programming priorities. We'll talk about those in a moment. Strong concept papers also match up with our core principles. We talked about those earlier, the anti-poverty focus, the community empowerment, building capacity, and sustainability. And of course, we ask that folks are specific, paint a clear picture of your project, help a reader understand what it is that you're trying to do. For example, don't forget to include the number of VISTAs that you are considering requesting. It doesn't mean that's all you'll get, and some consultation with the regional office, as I said, can go a long way to help figuring out what that looks like. We're closing in on time here, so I'm going to run through some of the final slides here and talk about our programming priorities that are for our fiscal year. Each year, CNCS issues what we call program guidance that outlines the upcoming year's priorities for new project development. And the program guidance for fiscal year 2021, which I said begins on October 1st, is now available and can be found online. We've got a link to that later in the slides. This is a key resource that you'll want to look through, but we want to highlight some of those priorities for you today. And no surprise, many of them reflect current events. So last year, I think few of us could have imagined how a pandemic would upend the world. And many organizations have temporarily shuttered their doors or adapted to their missions on the fly. And VISTA as a program wants to support organizations that are addressing critical needs during the COVID-19 pandemic. So that reflects some of our priorities. And in addition to the pandemic, which disproportionately affects Black and other communities of color, the longstanding racial inequities in our country have been elevated to a national conversation. And we believe that economic inequity is inexorably linked to the history of racial inequity in this country, and that CNCS is committed to addressing these injustices. So CNCS and VISTA will focus on awarding projects that advance racial equity and increase opportunity. So here's a few highlights under the focus area of economic opportunity. We want to encourage applications that fall under the priorities of housing, employment, and bridging the digital divide. And in terms of housing, that includes transitioning individuals into or helping them remain safe in safe, affordable housing, focusing on veterans and those displaced due to COVID-19, and organizations focused on eviction prevention are also really strongly encouraged to apply. In terms of employment, our program priorities include improving and creating job skills programs, particularly career and technical education programs. And we want to continue bridging the digital divide, improving access to computers, high-speed internet. I think everyone is seeing that we continue to have a lot of work to do to make sure that folks have access to the technology and can use that effectively. We're also giving priority to projects that will meet health needs for economically disadvantaged individuals, especially in terms of access to healthcare and food security. In terms of healthcare, that means preventative education and treatment recovery services regarding the COVID-19 pandemic and the opioid crisis, including mental health services. We encourage public health agencies and their community partners to consider VISTA members to support contact tracing programs. And in terms of food security, we're interested in supporting programs that are trying to alleviate hunger and increase access to nutritious food, particularly development of alternate food distribution and feeding sites to accommodate closures of traditional feeding sites at schools and after school programs, connections to SNAP and individual food banks, pantries, and so much more of the organizations that are on the network supporting food security. The VISTA program also will support projects that enhance access to services and resources related to educational outcomes. This is a big area that VISTA projects get involved with today, and will continue to do that, looking at school readiness and learning loss, K-12 success and student and educational behavioral outcomes, including remote learning program development, career and technical education programs, college access and success, and science, technology, engineering, and math programs as well. And VISTA will support programs that focus on low-income veterans and military families as beneficiaries as well in those areas of economic opportunity, education, and healthy futures that I covered just now. I think in the interest of time, why don't we pass on this poll and make sure that we can get to some of the other key items that we have for you. Kelly, do you want to talk a little bit about the concept paper submission?
Actually, I think we are going to jump straight to slide 36 if possible. I see our friends at LSI are moving ahead for us. The e-grants instructions you can find on our website. We definitely wanted to give you the timeline. However, as well as have a chance to review the questions that have been asked and see if there are any other ones. The webinar obviously is today, and where this RFCP timeline is on our website, we will post the link to the recording as well as to this PowerPoint so you can see the resource links. Concept papers are due by a minute before midnight on Thursday, October 1st. Our regional offices will have through November to review them and get back to you whether or not the concept papers are accepted, at which point you would begin the full application. The concept paper is 4 narratives. It's not hard. So this gives you 3 other opportunities throughout the fiscal year to apply if you don't have time for this quarter, however. But remember, we work with you to develop the project. It is not a competitive process, so feel free to reach out to the regional office for assistance. Completing the application process, again, you complete, once the concept paper is done, you submit a full application, supervisor orientation, member recruitment. Just giving you that flow. It takes probably, if you were to apply now, you would not be placing members until January or February. But if we could advance to the slide for resources, and again, we will link these, but some of the questions we got, I know Rob covered the one about just asking a VISTA. We also got another one, whether projects who offer the living allowance, which would be the cost share, prioritized over organizations who do not. In the first couple of years, absolutely not. And generally, it is not used unless resources are very tight. It does show a sponsor's ability to take on the VISTA project and achieve sustainability, but that is definitely nothing that we look at in terms of setting priorities for sponsorship at the start. Another question was, is there any sort of base education requirement for someone who's working with college students? This person served, thank you for your service, with a project in Michigan, and a bachelor's degree was required. VISTA does not have a base education requirement. Some projects may set it. I would say, having worked on VISTA projects in Virginia, some of my best projects had a nice mix of college graduates as well as individuals from the community. I had a VISTA volunteer. She was working on her GED as a VISTA. At a health project, she ultimately did 2 years of service, became a VISTA leader. And when I left the Virginia DC state office, the local hospital had asked her to come work for them as well as be on their boards. So definitely consider all the possible candidates. People from the community are often your best resources. The next one was, where do we go to find technical support resources? They are here and on the presentation. They will be hyperlinked, so you'll be able to access them. For assistance with e-grants, setting that up, we've got the hotline listed there at the bottom, as well as a link to our guidance and the concept paper instructions. Does anyone else have any questions? I see when would funding be put in place if we complete by the end of Q1? Stephanie?
Yeah, thanks, Kelly. And sorry about that. I accidentally hit the answer live button when I went to type into the chat. So, but I will gladly take that. Thanks for the question. Kelly showed the timeline, and of course, the timeline is available on our website as well. But ideally, an application would be awarded in January of 2021 if you were able to submit a concept paper by that October deadline. Now, this does sometimes vary depending upon your organization. Sometimes it may take you a little bit longer to work through the application process, but again, ideally that would be January 21. So as Kelly referenced, there's a number of actions that would happen after the project was awarded. This would include some virtual training for the project supervisor, the project director, as well as some training for the members. So it may be a couple of months after that before your first members actually began service. Thanks, Kelly. I'll turn it back over to you.
I'm not seeing any new questions. Last call for questions.
And Kelly, while we wait for questions, I do just want to clarify one item. The previous question, of course, says, when would funding be put in place? And so I do just want to clarify that with the VISTA program, particularly with our year one sponsors, we do not provide funding to the sponsors. Instead, we provide, of course, the opportunity to host AmeriCorps VISTA members. And then we actually provide the living allowance to the members themselves. So particularly for this first year, there would not be funding associated with that. It would, of course, just be the federal resources.
That is correct. And Cartlett, yes, this will be uploaded. And for folks who registered, we will capture your emails and send out a notice when our webmaster has uploaded the presentation so you can get a link back to it. Another minute for questions. The living stipends vary. This does not come, no, VISTA sponsors may not supplement the living allowance of their members. That's another one of those big legal legislative no-nos. The living allowance varies based on the cost of living rate set by the census and HUD. So a VISTA serving in Manhattan, for instance, would make more than a VISTA serving in rural Kentucky. We try to raise it when the funds are available to accommodate the changes in housing, but the stipends vary based on the housing rates, but we set those rates, we pay them. Sponsors can help support their VISTAs through housing, but that housing would be paid to the landlords, and that is something much farther down the line to worry about. But that's the difference for the stipend, or the living allowance, sorry. Okay. Quite all right. Let's see. Okay. I don't see any other general project questions. Again, for general questions, you can email us at vista@americorps.gov to reach the people responsible, ultimately responsible for reviewing your concept paper and providing technical resources. It is the first two letters of your organization states. So if you are in Florida, it is fl@cns.gov, California, ca@cns.gov. And you will reach the staff who can provide local technical assistance. And with that, we thank you very much for attending today's webinar, and we hope that VISTA is a resource that meets your needs, and if so, we look forward to seeing your concept papers either in October or in the quarters that follow. Thank you very much.